My name is Vanessa, I'm 29 years old, and if you had asked me 2 years ago who I was, I would have said, just a girl trying to make it by. I never thought I'd be the kind of woman people whispered about, in admiration, in envy, in disbelief. But everything changed the day he walked out on me. His name was Derek. We'd been together for 5 years, and in those years I gave up more than I realized, my time, my money, my self-respect. We were building a business together, at least that's what I thought. I had started a small online shop selling handmade planners, journals, and productivity tools. I poured my soul into it, and he smiled for the pictures and told everyone it was our idea. The day it all broke apart wasn't anything cinematic. There wasn't a screaming match or a dramatic betrayal I caught in the act. He just came home, dropped his keys on the counter, and said he was done. "You'll never make it without me," he said, with this smug half-grin I'll never forget. He packed a duffel bag and walked out like 5 years of my life meant nothing. That night I sat on the floor of our empty apartment, surrounded by boxes of unsold journals, sobbing until my throat burned. He had taken most of the money, most of the contacts, even my laptop. All I had left was my phone, a pile of tears, and a tiny flame of anger in my chest. But here's the thing about me, I don't stay broken for long. By sunrise, that anger had shifted into something sharper, something hungrier. I opened my phone, recorded a raw, shaky video about what had just happened, and posted it on TikTok. I didn't know it then, but that video would change everything. When I hit post on that video, I didn't expect much. I wasn't thinking about strategy, algorithms, or whether anyone would even care. I just needed to get it off my chest. My voice cracked in the recording, my hair was a mess, and I was sitting on the floor with mascara running down my face. I spoke about how Derek left, how he told me I'd never make it without him, and how all I had left were these journals I had designed with every ounce of hope I had left. Then I went to bed. When I woke up, my phone was buzzing like crazy. At first, I thought maybe my mom or my best friend had blown up my phone with sympathy texts. But when I unlocked it, I saw notifications stacked higher than I'd ever seen before, thousands of likes, comments, and shares. My heart pounded as I scrolled. The comments were a mix of outrage and encouragement. "Girl, he did what? You don't need him, you've got this. These journals are gorgeous, I want one. Where can I buy?" I couldn't believe it. I clicked into my shop's website, and my jaw literally dropped. Orders were pouring in, dozens, then hundreds. In the first hour of checking, I'd already sold out of 2 designs. My little side hustle, the one he always laughed at, was suddenly exploding. By the afternoon, I was in full panic mode, but the good kind. I was scrambling to print shipping labels, answering customer emails, and watching my follower count jump by the thousands every time I refreshed. I remember laughing and crying at the same time, whispering to myself, "Oh my God, this is really happening." But here's the truth, going viral wasn't just luck. It was the first strike in a much bigger plan. Derek thought walking away left me broken. What he didn't know was that by leaving, he handed me the perfect story, and the world was ready to hear it. The first week after Derek left was chaos, in the best and worst way. I had more orders than I knew how to handle, and every night I stayed up until 3 a.m., packaging journals at my kitchen table. My tiny apartment looked like a shipping warehouse. Bubble wrap, tape rolls, stacks of boxes, it was madness, but it was mine. I felt alive again. Every time I slid a journal into an envelope, I felt like I was sealing another piece of my independence, my revenge. And people weren't just buying, they were sharing. Customers posted unboxing videos, leaving glowing reviews, tagging me in photos of their journals with captions like, "Supporting this queen who turned heartbreak into a business." The momentum wasn't slowing down, it was building. And then, of course, Derek resurfaced. It started with a text. Just 4 words, "Can we talk?" I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. The nerve. After everything he'd said, everything he took, he thought he could just slide back in? I ignored him. The next day, he called. I didn't pick up. Then came a voicemail. His voice was softer than I remembered, almost pitiful. Vanessa, I think I made a mistake. I see what you're doing online. You're blowing up. I knew you had it in you. Maybe we can figure things out. For a moment, a small, broken part of me, the part that had once loved him, almost considered it. Almost. But then I remembered those words burned into me the night he left. You'll never make it without me. I laughed out loud listening to his voicemail. Not because it was funny, but because it was pathetic. He hadn't believed in me when I needed him. Now that the world did, he wanted a seat at the table. That was the day I made a promise to myself. Derek was never going to benefit from my success. Not one penny, not 1 second of my spotlight. He wanted me to fail. Now, I was going to make sure he lived every single day knowing that I didn't. Once I made that promise to myself, something inside me hardened, in the best possible way. I wasn't just selling journals anymore. I was building an empire. The first thing I did was reinvest every dime I made. I upgraded my printer, bought better packaging, and hired a local college student, Maya, to help me with shipping. She came over after class, and together we'd crank music, pack orders, and laugh about how my living room had basically become Journal HQ. Next, I started listening to my customers. They weren't just buying journals, they were asking for planners, vision boards, habit trackers. So I expanded my line. Within a month, I had 3 new products, each one inspired by comments and messages from people who believed in me more than Derek ever had. But it wasn't just about the products, it was about the story. People weren't buying because they needed paper. They were buying because they wanted to support the girl who was told she'd never make it. And that's when it hit me, this wasn't just business, it was personal branding. I leaned into it. I shared updates about my growth, the late nights, the lessons I was learning. I showed the messy behind-the-scenes moments, ink stains on my hands, piles of orders taller than me, Maya and I collapsing on the couch after a long day. And people loved it. They weren't just cheering me on, they felt like they were part of my rise. Meanwhile, Derek kept trying. More texts. More calls. Even a fake "congratulations" comment under one of my viral posts. He wanted the world to think he was supportive. What he didn't know was that I was already planning the ultimate way to put him in his place, without ever saying his name. See, revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's subtle. But when done right, it cuts deeper than any insult. And I had just the idea to make sure Derek would never forget me, or the mistake he made. The idea came to me one night while I was sketching new designs. I had been thinking about Derek more than I wanted to admit, not because I missed him, but because I hated the idea that he might still think he had power over me. That smug grin of his haunted me. And then, almost like lightning, it hit me, what if I turned his words into my weapon? I went back to the video I'd posted that first night, the one where I was crying, broken, and repeating what he told me. You'll never make it without me. Those words were the spark that started all of this. And now, they were going to be my brand's biggest statement. I designed a new journal cover. On the front, in bold, modern lettering, it said, "Watch me." On the inside flap, I added a small printed note that read, "Dedicated to every woman who was told she couldn't, by someone who didn't believe in her." When I shared it online, I didn't drop Derek's name, I didn't need to. I simply posted a picture of the new journal with the caption, "Inspired by the words that tried to break me." The response was explosive. Women from everywhere commented things like, "This hit me right in the soul. Add to cart immediately. Men like him create women like you, powerful." The Watch Me journal became my bestseller overnight. Every copy that shipped out felt like another dagger in Derek's pride, and the best part was, he couldn't say a word. He couldn't call me petty, couldn't accuse me of lying, because I had never said his name. But he knew. God, he knew. And just like that, my revenge began, not with fire and screaming, but with ink and paper. I wasn't just surviving without him, I was thriving, and making sure the whole world saw it. I didn't have to wait long to see Derek's reaction. A week after launching the Watch Me journal, I got a DM from him. It was short, but the anger bled through the screen. Really, Vanessa? Using our breakup to sell your crap? Pathetic. I stared at the message for a long time. For once, I wasn't hurt, I was amused. Derek hated one thing more than anything else, being made a fool of. And here he was, watching thousands of people celebrate my success, knowing that it all stemmed from the moment he tried to break me. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Silence was its own kind of revenge. Instead, I screenshotted the notification, cropping out his name, of course, and posted it with a caption, "When your success bothers the wrong person, you know you're on the right path." My followers went wild. The comments section turned into a rally of women sharing their own stories of being doubted, abandoned, underestimated. Suddenly, my business wasn't just about journals, it was a movement. Orders kept flooding in. Influencers started reaching out, asking to collaborate. A motivational podcast invited me to share my story. I even got an email from a small boutique in Chicago wanting to stock my products in their store. It felt surreal, like the universe was finally paying me back for every tear I had shed. Meanwhile, Derek couldn't stand being ignored. He sent another message, this time longer, dripping with bitterness. "You think this will last? It's just a trend. Without me, you don't have staying power." I actually laughed when I read it. He still didn't get it. I wasn't surviving without him, I was unstoppable because he left. And that night, as I packed another 100 Watch Me journals for shipment, I whispered under my breath, "Watch me, Derek. Just watch me." Success is a funny thing. At first, it feels like a wave, sudden, overwhelming, almost too much to handle. But if you learn to ride it, that wave can carry you farther than you ever imagined. Within 2 months of launching the Watch Me journal, my story started showing up everywhere. A local news station reached out for an interview. Then an online magazine did a feature about the woman who turned heartbreak into a business empire. By the end of that week, I was invited onto a morning talk show in New York. Sitting under those bright studio lights, I felt like I was in a dream. The host leaned in and asked, "So Vanessa, how does it feel to know that someone once told you you'd never make it without them, and now, here you are, proving them wrong in front of millions?" I smiled into the camera and answered with the same 2 words that had become my mantra, "Watch me." The studio erupted in applause. That clip went viral on its own, and my sales tripled overnight. Soon, my brand wasn't just a shop, it was a statement. Women wore my journals like armor. Some even sent me photos of themselves holding them up during divorce hearings, career changes, and graduations. I was no longer just a small business owner. I was a symbol of resilience. And Derek? Oh, he noticed. One evening, I got an email, not from him directly, but from his new girlfriend. Or maybe I should say his rebound. She wrote, "I don't know what you did to him, but he won't stop talking about you. Maybe leave him alone?" I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my phone. Leave him alone? He was the one chasing me. He was the one watching my interviews, my posts, my wins, while I hadn't spared him a single word in public. It was clear, Derek couldn't stand that my success was bigger than his ego. And I wasn't finished yet. By the time spring rolled around, I had reached a point where I could no longer keep up with orders from my apartment. The stacks of boxes were climbing higher than my couch, and my kitchen table hadn't seen a proper meal in months. It was buried under packaging tape and shipping labels. That's when I knew it was time to take the next step. I found a small warehouse space on the edge of town. It wasn't glamorous, concrete floors, flickering overhead lights, and a faint smell of paint thinner, but when I signed that lease, I felt like I had just bought a piece of my future. I hired 3 more employees, young women who reminded me of myself not so long ago, hungry, determined, and ready for more than life had offered them so far. Then came the email that made me stop breathing for a second. A well-known lifestyle influencer, Caroline Brooks, had discovered my journals. She had millions of followers and a reputation for turning small brands into household names overnight. Her message was simple: I love your story. I love your products. Let's collaborate. I said yes before I even finished reading. Within a week, she was holding up my Watch Me journal in one of her videos, telling her followers, this isn't just a notebook. It's proof that you can turn pain into power. Orders crashed my website within hours. I had to upgrade servers just to keep up. And while I was climbing higher, Derek was sliding further down. I didn't go looking for the information, but small towns talk. A friend of a friend told me he'd quit his job after some falling out with his boss, and he'd been bouncing between couches, chasing half-baked business ideas that never took off. The same man who once sneered at my dreams now couldn't hold his own together. I didn't gloat out loud. I didn't post a thing. But inside, I savored every second of it. My revenge wasn't about hurting him, it was about living so brightly that he had to squint to even watch. And I wasn't done shining yet. I should have expected it. Derek was never the type to stay quiet when someone else was winning. If there's one thing he couldn't stand, it was not being the center of attention. It started with subtle comments. A mutual acquaintance messaged me one day saying Derek had been running his mouth at a bar. He was telling people my business was fake successful, that I was just good at scamming people with sob stories. At first, I brushed it off. Let him talk. Gossip fades. But then he took it a step further. Out of nowhere, a post popped up on Facebook from his account, long, bitter, and dripping with jealousy. He claimed that he had built the foundation of my business, that he had made the key connections, and that I was stealing credit. I won't lie, my stomach dropped when I saw it. His post started getting traction, shared around by people who knew us back when we were together. Some even left comments on my page, asking if it was true. For the first time since going viral, I felt that old sting of doubt creeping back in. But then something amazing happened. Before I could even craft a response, my customers, my followers, and even strangers I'd never met started defending me. Women flooded the comments on Derek's post, calling him out for being bitter and jealous. A few even linked screenshots of my original TikTok, the one I made the night he left, reminding everyone where this all started. One woman wrote, "Funny how she's thriving and he's crying. That tells you everything you need to know." Within hours, his post was swarmed with so much backlash that he deleted it. By morning, it was gone. That day, I realized something crucial: my story no longer belonged to Derek and me. It belonged to the thousands of women who saw themselves in it. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore, I was carrying them with me. And together, we were unstoppable. After Derek's failed attempt to discredit me, I could have let it slide. I could have moved on, kept packing orders, and ignored it. But deep down, I knew this was a gift, an opportunity one couldn't waste. That morning, as I sat in my warehouse with coffee in hand, I drafted a new campaign idea. Derek wanted to paint me as a liar, a fraud, someone riding on pity. Fine. I'd flip the script and own it. I took one of his favorite phrases from back when we were together, something he used to say every time I talked about my ideas: "It's not that deep, Vanessa." He'd roll his eyes whenever I poured my heart into something, like my passion was an inconvenience. So, I designed a limited edition journal. On the front cover, in bold letters, it read, "Deeper than you think." I launched it the next day with a caption: "To everyone who was ever told their dreams were too much or not that deep, this one's for you." The response was explosive. Within 24 hours, the journals sold out. Women posted videos holding them up, sharing their own stories of being dismissed, overlooked, underestimated. It became a rallying cry, just like Watch Me had been. And here's the kicker: my followers knew exactly where the inspiration had come from. I didn't have to mention Derek's name, again, I never did, but they pieced it together, and they loved that I was turning every insult he ever threw at me into fuel for my success. Instead of damaging me, Derek had handed me the perfect marketing tool. Every word meant to tear me down was now making me money. Every sneer, every eye roll, every bitter rant, it was all raw material for growth. He wanted to drag me back into the shadows. Instead, he gave me more light to shine in. And this time, I wasn't just shining for me. I was building something bigger than I'd ever imagined. By summer, my little, side hustle wasn't little anymore. What started in my living room had grown into a full-fledged brand with a loyal community that felt more like a movement. My journals weren't just being sold online anymore, they were finding their way into boutiques across the country. Then came the email that made me scream so loud Maya thought I had burned myself with the hot glue gun. It was from a national retail chain. They'd seen the buzz around my products and wanted to test them in select stores. My hands shook as I reread the email, making sure I wasn't imagining it. This was the kind of break that could put my brand on the map for good. Within weeks, my products were sitting on real store shelves. I'll never forget the first time I walked into one of those stores and saw the Watch Me journal displayed front and center. A woman was standing there, flipping through it, and when she saw me hovering nearby, she smiled and said, "This journal makes me feel like I can do anything." I nearly cried on the spot. Meanwhile, Derek's unraveling was impossible to ignore. Small towns love to talk, and the updates made their way back to me whether I wanted them or not. He tried launching some kind of consulting business, but no one was buying what he was selling. He'd burned through savings, alienated friends, and was seen more often sulking at the local dive bar than doing anything productive. I didn't need to rub it in his face. His downfall spoke louder than anything I could have said. While he was stuck in place, drowning in bitterness, I was moving forward faster than ever. The best part? For every new milestone, every store placement, every sellout launch, I kept imagining him seeing it, hearing about it, realizing he had front row seats to the show of my life. And I knew the finale was still to come. The invitation came in the form of a sleek envelope with bold lettering across the front, "Women Who Inspire Conference." Inside was a handwritten note from the organizer. She wrote that she'd been following my journey from the very first viral video, and she wanted me to be a keynote speaker at their annual event. Thousands of women would be there, entrepreneurs, students, dreamers, all looking for stories that lit a fire inside them. I sat there staring at the letter, my heart pounding. A year ago, I was crying on the floor of an empty apartment. Now I was being asked to stand on stage and tell my story. When the day of the event arrived, I stood backstage with shaking hands. The room was massive, rows upon rows of women, the hum of chatter filling the air. I could see the big screen displaying my name next to the words, turning heartbreak into power. The lights dimmed, and I walked out. The applause was deafening, and for a second, I thought I might cry. But then I remembered Derek's words, "You'll never make it without me." And suddenly, I felt stronger than I ever had. I told them everything. Not the messy details, not his name, but the heart of it, the betrayal, the tears, the moment I decided to stop waiting for someone to save me. I talked about starting with nothing but anger and a pile of unsold journals, and how that became the fuel for everything I built. When I finished, I looked out at the audience and said, "If someone ever tells you that you can't make it without them, don't waste your breath arguing. Just smile and say, 'Watch me.'" The room erupted in cheers. Women stood, clapping, shouting, some even crying. In that moment, I realized it wasn't just about Derek anymore. My revenge had transformed into something much bigger. It was about proving, to myself and to every woman in that room, that we are always enough. The night after the conference, I was still buzzing with adrenaline. My inbox was overflowing with messages, women thanking me for sharing my story, companies reaching out about partnerships, and even a few speaking offers for other events. I felt unstoppable. And then, right in the middle of all that excitement, came the email I should have expected but still dreaded seeing. It was from Derek. The subject line read, "Can we start over?" I almost laughed. Start over? With him? But curiosity got the better of me, and I clicked it open. The message was long, rambling, almost desperate. He wrote about how he'd been watching my success, how proud he was, the audacity, and how he believed we could be a power couple if we reunited. He even tossed in a half-baked apology, claiming he didn't mean the things he said when he left. I sat back in my chair, shaking my head. There it was, the last desperate grasp of a man who had underestimated me, left me, and now couldn't stand to see me win without him. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I thought about the girl I had been the night he walked out, the one crying on the floor, convinced her world had just ended. I thought about how far I'd come, how many doors had opened, how many women I had lifted up simply by refusing to quit. Finally, I typed one line. I made it without you. And I'll keep going without you. Then I hit send. For the first time since Derek walked out, I felt the chapter closing. Not with screaming, not with revenge that burned, but with peace. He no longer had any power over me. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't broken. I wasn't even thinking about him. I was thinking about me. About the empire I was building, the women I was inspiring, and the future that was waiting. 6 months after that final email to Derek, my life looked nothing like it used to. What had once been a cramped apartment full of boxes was now a thriving business with a team of 20 employees, a warehouse twice the size of the first one, and orders shipping out daily across the country. But the real turning point came when I signed a distribution deal with a major retail giant. My journals weren't just in a handful of boutiques anymore, they were in stores nationwide. I'll never forget walking into a Target for the first time and seeing an entire display dedicated to my brand. Bright lights, bold signage, women standing in the aisle flipping through the "Watch Me" and "Deeper Than You Think" collections. I stood there in disbelief, my throat tightening. This was bigger than I had ever imagined. And then came the emails from international buyers. First Canada. Then the UK. Then Australia. My brand was no longer just an American story, it was becoming global. Women across oceans were sending me messages saying my products gave them courage, reminding me that pain is universal but so is resilience. I decided to launch one more special edition journal to mark the moment. On the cover it read, "Made Without You." It wasn't bitter. It wasn't angry. It was triumphant. It was my declaration to the world, and maybe, quietly, to Derek, that my success had been born from independence, strength, and the choice to rise when everything tried to pull me down. The launch shattered records. Within hours, every copy sold out online. My team celebrated with champagne in the warehouse, music blasting, confetti flying. And as I looked around at the women who stood beside me, my employees, my supporters, my customers, I realized this wasn't just my happy ending. It was the beginning of something even bigger. Sometimes I catch myself thinking back to that night, the night Derek walked out, the night I thought my life was over. I remember sitting on the floor with tears in my eyes, surrounded by unsold journals and broken promises, convinced I had nothing left. And then I look at where I am now. A CEO. A speaker. A mentor. A woman who built an empire out of heartbreak. My products line shelves across the country, my words inspire women around the world, and my story has reached further than I ever dreamed it could. But more important than any of that, I found myself. For so long, I measured my worth through Derek's eyes. I gave, and gave, and gave, hoping one day he would look at me and say I was enough. He never did. And yet, here I am, not just enough, I am more. More than I thought possible. More than he could have imagined. More than his bitterness can ever touch. I don't think about Derek much anymore. He's just a shadow in my past, a reminder of who I'll never be again. My revenge isn't the money I made, the stores I'm in, or the stages I speak on. My real revenge is peace. It's the joy I feel waking up every morning to do work I love. It's the pride in my chest when I see a woman holding one of my journals like it's a lifeline. It's the freedom of knowing I never needed him in the first place. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: when someone tries to break you, you have two choices. You can stay shattered, or you can rebuild yourself into something stronger, sharper, unstoppable. I chose the second. And now, every time I see the words, "Watch me," printed on one of my journals, I smile. Because I did more than survive. I rose. And I never looked back.